2 a.m. Everyone else is asleep. But your mind is running a marathon. You're replaying that conversation from 3 days ago, analyzing every word you said, every facial expression they made. You're planning tomorrow's tasks, then next week's, then worrying about something that might happen in 6 months. You know you should sleep. You know this thinking isn't productive, but you can't stop. One thought leads to another, then another. Then suddenly you're spiraling through worst-case scenarios, past regrets, and future anxieties all at once. If this is you, you're not alone, and you're not broken. But there's a reason your mind works this way, a deep psychological reason that goes back further than you think. This is MindTrip. And today we're diving into the psychology of people who overthink everything. Let's be clear about what we're talking about. Overthinking isn't just thinking a lot. It's not being thoughtful or careful or analytical. Overthinking is when your mind gets stuck in loops, when you analyze the same situation from every possible angle, only to end up more confused than when you started. When you can't make decisions because you're paralyzed by all the potential outcomes. When you lie awake at night, replaying conversations that are long over. It's exhausting. It's isolating, and people who don't experience it will tell you things like, just stop thinking so much, or you're being dramatic, or it's not that deep. But here's what they don't understand. For you, it is that deep. Your brain doesn't have an off switch. Every interaction, every decision, every possibility branches into 1,000 more thoughts. And society tells you this is a flaw, that you're anxious, neurotic, too sensitive, too complicated. But what if I told you that your overthinking isn't random, that it's not a personality defect or a chemical imbalance that appeared out of nowhere? What if your overthinking is actually a deeply intelligent survival mechanism that your brain developed for a very specific reason? Let's start with what overthinking looks like in daily life. You send a text, then you reread it 17 times, analyzing the tone, wondering if you sounded too needy, too cold, too eager. You see they read it, but didn't respond immediately, and your mind creates 10 different explanations, each worse than the last. You're in a meeting at work. Someone makes a comment that might have been directed at you, might have been criticism, or maybe it was nothing. But for the next 3 days, you're dissecting that moment, wondering if you should address it, if you're being paranoid, if everyone noticed. You have to make a decision, where to eat, which job to take, whether to text someone back. And suddenly you're trapped, because every option has consequences. Every choice could be the wrong one. So you freeze, you research, you make pro-con lists, you ask for advice, but nothing feels certain enough. This is the overthinker's world, a world where nothing is simple, where every moment contains infinite layers of meaning, interpretation, and potential disaster. And here's what makes it worse. You know you're doing it. You're aware that you're overthinking. You tell yourself to stop, but that just becomes another thing to overthink. Why can't I stop? What's wrong with me? Why am I like this? The mental exhaustion is real, because overthinking doesn't just happen in your mind, it lives in your body. Tight chest, tense shoulders, that knot in your stomach that never quite goes away. So where does this come from? For most people who overthink compulsively, the roots trace back to childhood. Specifically, to an environment where you had to think ahead to stay safe. Maybe you grew up in a household where moods were unpredictable, where your parent could be loving one moment and explosive the next, where you never knew which version of them you'd encounter when you came home from school. So you learned to read the room. You analyzed their tone of voice, their body language, the way they closed the door. You became a detective in your own home, constantly scanning for danger signals, because if you could predict their mood, you could adjust your behavior. You could avoid the anger, the criticism, the cold withdrawal. This wasn't paranoia. This was survival. And your brain got very, very good at it. Or maybe your household was different. Maybe it was calm on the surface, but emotionally neglectful underneath, where feelings weren't discussed, where vulnerability was dismissed, where you learned that the only person you could rely on was yourself. So you learned to think through every scenario alone, to problem solve without support, to never ask for help because help wasn't coming. Your mind became your only ally. Or perhaps you were the good kid, the responsible one, the one who held the family together while the adults around you struggled. You took on emotional responsibility way too young. And with that responsibility came constant mental calculation. How do I keep everyone happy? How do I prevent conflict? What do I need to do next? There's another pattern too. Maybe you experienced criticism, harsh, constant, unforgiving criticism. Nothing you did was good enough. Every mistake was pointed out, analyzed, used as evidence of your inadequacy. So you learned to criticize yourself first. If you could catch your own mistakes before anyone else did, maybe you could avoid their judgment. Your mind became a preemptive strike system, constantly scanning for flaws, errors, ways you might fail. Here's what all these scenarios have in common: unpredictability and lack of safety. When a child feels safe, they can be spontaneous, they can make mistakes, they can exist without constantly monitoring themselves and their environment. But when a child doesn't feel safe emotionally, physically, or psychologically, their brain adapts. It develops hypervigilance. It learns to predict, analyze, and prepare for every possible threat. And that's what overthinking is. It's hypervigilance that never turned off. As a child, your overthinking protected you. It helped you navigate chaos, avoid punishment, stay invisible, keep others happy. It was intelligent, it was necessary. But here's the painful truth. You're not in that environment anymore. You're an adult now. The threats you once faced aren't present in the same way, but your brain doesn't know that. It's still running the same protective program, scanning for danger that isn't there, trying to control outcomes that don't need to be controlled. Your overthinking saved you then. But now it's keeping you stuck. Let's talk about what's actually happening in your brain when you overthink. Your brain has two key players in this process: the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. The amygdala is your brain's alarm system. It's designed to detect threats and trigger your fight or flight response. When you were a child in an unpredictable environment, your amygdala was on high alert, constantly scanning for danger. And here's the thing about the amygdala: it doesn't forget. Even when the danger is gone, if it was activated frequently enough during your developmental years, it stays sensitive. It remains hypervigilant. So now, as an adult, your amygdala treats uncertainty like a threat. A text left on read? Threat. A decision without a clear right answer? Threat. Someone's tone shifting slightly? Threat. Your prefrontal cortex, the logical, rational part of your brain, tries to step in. It tries to calm the amygdala down by analyzing the situation, gathering information, and creating plans. But here's the problem. When your amygdala is activated, your prefrontal cortex can't fully calm it down through thinking alone. So you think more and more and more, trying to create enough certainty to feel safe. But you never get there because no amount of thinking can create the certainty your amygdala is demanding. There's also something called the default mode network, the part of your brain that activates when you're not focused on a specific task. For most people, this network creates pleasant daydreams, creative thoughts, or simple mind wandering. But for overthinkers, the default mode network becomes a rumination machine. Instead of wandering peacefully, your mind spirals. It rehashes the past, catastrophizes the future, analyzes social interactions on repeat. Neuroscience research shows that people who overthink often have an overactive default mode network. Your brain, even at rest, is working overtime. And here's where it gets really interesting. This pattern creates neural pathways. Every time you overthink, you're strengthening the connections that make overthinking easier. It becomes your brain's default state. Think of it like a path through a forest. The first time you walk it, you're pushing through brush, creating the trail. But walk it 1,000 times, and it becomes a clear, easy path. That's what's happened in your brain. Overthinking is the well-worn path. Calm, present moment awareness, that's the overgrown trail you rarely use. But here's the good news, and this is important. Your brain is neuroplastic. That means it can change. Those neural pathways can be rewired. The overthinking path can be grown over, and new paths can be created. But it takes intention, it takes practice, and it starts with understanding that you're not broken. You're wired this way for a reason. I need you to hear this. Your overthinking doesn't make you defective. It makes you someone who learned very early that the world wasn't safe unless you thought 10 steps ahead. You're not too much. You're not too sensitive. You're not crazy or paranoid or neurotic. You're someone whose brain adapted brilliantly to an environment that required constant vigilance, and that adaptation kept you safe. Your overthinking meant you could predict your parents' moods and avoid their anger. Your overthinking meant you caught mistakes before others could criticize you. Your overthinking meant you stayed one step ahead of chaos. It was intelligent, it was survival. And I want you to thank that part of yourself. Seriously, thank the overthinker in you, because without it, you might not have made it through. But here's where we need to shift. What served you then is hurting you now. The hypervigilance that protected you as a child is now creating anxiety in safe situations. The mental rehearsal that prevented disasters is now preventing you from being present. The constant analyzing that kept you prepared is now keeping you exhausted. And this is the hard part, the part where empathy meets honesty. You're safe now, or at least safer than you were. The threats you once faced aren't present in the same way, but your brain hasn't updated its operating system. You're living in the present with a nervous system stuck in the past, and that's not your fault. You didn't choose this. You didn't ask for a childhood that required hypervigilance. You didn't decide to wire your brain this way. But here's the truth that's both difficult and empowering. You're the only one who can change it. No one is coming to fix your overthinking. No amount of understanding from others will quiet your mind. No external validation will make the spiral stop. The power to change this is yours. And that's actually good news. Because it means you're not helpless, you're not stuck, you're not doomed to overthink forever. You have agency, you have a choice, and you have the ability to rewire your brain. It won't be fast, it won't be easy, but it's possible. So how do you actually start changing this pattern? Let me give you 3 neuroscience-based tools that can begin to interrupt the overthinking cycle. Tool 1, the nervous system reset. When you catch yourself spiraling, your body is in fight or flight mode. Your amygdala is activated, and you can't think your way out of that state. You have to shift your physiology first. Try this. 4-7-8 breathing. Breathe in through your nose for 4 counts. Hold for 7 counts. Exhale through your mouth for 8 counts. Repeat 4 times. Why does this work? Because the long exhale activates your parasympathetic nervous system, the system that tells your body it's safe. It's a physiological override of the panic response. Do this before you try to think through the problem. Calm your body first, then engage your mind. Tool 2, externalize your thoughts. Overthinking thrives in the echo chamber of your mind. Thoughts loop because they stay internal, abstract, unexamined. So get them out, write them down. All of them. Don't censor, don't organize, just dump every thought onto paper. Why does this work? Because writing moves thoughts from your amygdala, emotional brain, to your prefrontal cortex, logical brain. It transforms rumination into problem solving. Once your thoughts are external, you can see them for what they are, often repetitive, often exaggerated, often solvable. Tool 3, the worry window. Your brain overthinks because it believes that thinking equals problem solving. That if it just thinks hard enough, it can create certainty and safety. But most overthinking isn't productive, it's just mental churning. So here's the strategy. Set a worry window. Pick a specific 15-minute block each day, maybe 7 p.m., maybe during lunch, and allow yourself to overthink intentionally during that time only. When intrusive thoughts arise outside that window, acknowledge them. I see you. I'll think about this during my worry window, then redirect. Why does this work? Because it gives your brain permission to process, but within boundaries. It contains the overthinking instead of letting it invade every moment. These aren't quick fixes. Your brain won't rewire overnight. But every time you practice these tools, you're weakening the old neural pathways and strengthening new ones. You're teaching your brain, we're safe. We don't need to think 10 steps ahead. We can be present. Here's the philosophical truth that ties all of this together. You cannot control most of what happens in your life. You can't control how people respond to you. You can't predict every possible outcome. You can't think your way into certainty. And your overthinking is, at its core, an attempt to control the uncontrollable. It's your mind saying, if I just think hard enough, I can prevent bad things from happening. I can make the right choice. I can avoid pain. But life doesn't work that way. and trying to control it through thinking only creates suffering. The Stoics understood this. They taught that the only thing we can control is our response to what happens, not the events themselves. Your overthinking tries to control events. Your healing comes from learning to control your response. That means accepting uncertainty, not as a threat, but as the nature of existence. That means trusting yourself to handle whatever comes, rather than trying to anticipate and prevent everything. That means choosing presence over preparation, being here now instead of living in hypothetical futures and unchangeable pasts. This is the shift, from control to trust, from hypervigilance to presence, from mental exhaustion to mental peace. It's not about never thinking deeply again. It's about thinking when it serves you and releasing when it doesn't. It's about reclaiming your mental energy and directing it toward what actually matters: connection, creativity, growth, joy. You've spent years protecting yourself through thinking. It's time to start freeing yourself by letting go. Your overthinking isn't who you are. It's what your brain learned to do to keep you safe. And now that you understand where it comes from, the childhood need for control, the hypervigilant nervous system, the neural pathways carved deep, you can start to change it, not by thinking less, but by thinking differently, by calming your body first, by externalizing your thoughts, by setting boundaries around worry. This is the beginning of your transformation. Understanding is the first step. Action is the next. Thanks for taking this mind trip with me. Until next time, take care of your mind.